Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and let's be honest, it is never a dull moment.
What are we going to talk about this week, Eric?
I'm telling you what.
We always
Shane,
panic, when football season's over and and basketball season's not happening. What are we going to talk about? And that's never a problem, is it?
It is never a problem. Normally we have guests on the show. This week there's just so much for Shane and I to talk about. It's going to be the two of us. And we're in the middle of basketball season. We're pushing that to the second segment because there's a lot of things going on here. And if you're listening to this podcast, well, we obviously appreciate it. It's been a wild few weeks. You talk about ups and downs since that bowl win over Oklahoma. And just when you think things are on the right track and going in the right direction, and then the rug gets pulled out from under you. So we'll talk about it all. Let's get right to it. This is we're going to jump right into buy or sell, Shane. There's a lot to buy and sell this week. It is presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off. All right, Shane. Number one, we'll look back on Dave Heeke's tenure as a major success. The athletic director for U of A, who was let go on Monday.
Yeah, if you're going to throw in the word major, I would certainly sell it. For the moment, because I think the dust is going to settle on the whole financial situation, right? And how much blame Dave Heeke really has on the miscalculation or whatever you want to call it of $240 million. I'm just going to look at this from the sports side of things and not so much the financial side, which I know we're intertwined, but I think looking back at his 7 years, and I was at his introductory press conference 7 years ago, and I was encouraged by the hire then, and I thought overall he did an admirable job. I think you look at some of the hires that he made, or at least he collaborated in making. That's a whole other thing as far as who was really in charge of these decisions. Was it him or was it Dr. Robbins? Certainly bringing Tommy Lloyd to Tucson was a great move. Bringing Jed Fish, I know he spurned us, but he did great things in Tucson. I think Brent Brennan will prove at this point. Adia Barnes as well. Chip Hale, the jury's still out. Caitlin Lowe, I think, was a good hire, but we'll have to wait and see. But the one, the men's basketball and football are the money drivers, and I think Dave made some very good decisions there.
Someone
there was someone as well, but I mean, look, I think we're all excited about someone at first, so I don't necessarily blame him, but I think he learned a lot from that situation. So yeah, hits and misses overall. I think it was a net positive in terms of the guys the guys and gals he brought to Tucson. And I think that I remember early on in Heeke's tenure, Rich Rodriguez was at an event in Phoenix when he was still at the football coach, and mentioned that Dave Heeke was great in terms of helping move the indoor facility that he had been clamoring for years forward. He helped get that done. So that was a big deal as well, having that indoor building now, something that one of the first things Brent Brennan mentioned was when I was here, that was like a pipe dream. And now they have that facility. Yeah. So credit for that. Credit for, I think overall his hires were a net positive. And we'll have to wait and see where the dust settles as far as the financial mismanagement. Was it all on him? Did he get thrown under the bus? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. I wouldn't call his tenure a major success. Yeah, it might have been a success, and that's fine. I only met Dave once. Seemed like a nice guy. Didn't seem like a guy that was. Greg Byrne was in your face. I mean, he was everywhere. And that's what I appreciate about Greg. I mean, you could say what you want, but I personally always had a good rapport with Greg when I was working back in TV. I mean, he would come into a little podunk TV station here in Phoenix and do interviews, and multiple.
Yeah, he came up to 15 once too to promote the Cactus kickoff between Arizona and BYU. So yeah, no,
Greg got it. Greg understood it. Dave wasn't that guy.
No.
And I don't know that very many people are Greg Byrne as far as, willing to go in.
There's a reason he's at Alabama. Yeah.
Well, right. And you can understand that. With that said, I think Dave did a nice job. I think the Brennan hire, in my opinion, was Dr. Robbins allowing Dave to make the hire so that if it works out, he'll take the credit. Robbins will take the credit. And if it doesn't work out, then he'll pin it on Dave. It's hard to sit here right now and say Robbins is coming off as a great guy because it's not great. And I'm not going to sit here. I don't know him. I've never met him. what he's doing, correct me if I'm wrong, Shane, he's not coming off wonderful here. He's not.
No, I agree with you, and I think look, we all had mixed feelings about how involved he allegedly is with the athletic department. I think we were all didn't care for it originally when Jed Fish was hired, because it sounded like that was kind of his decision. You know, and Dave Heeke was asked about it the day of, you know, whose decision was it? And Dave said, well, it was a joint decision. That pretty much told me it was probably Robin's decision. I think if it was up to Dave, Brent Brennan would have been the coach 3 years ago. But if Robbins is that involved, you know, and I remember seeing him, you know, the last home game Arizona had against Utah, he was on the sideline talking with Jed Fish the whole time. You know, he was not a lot of university presidents do that. If he was that involved, is it really plausible that he didn't know about what was going on with the misallocation of funds?
Yeah, of course, he knew what was going on.
And the question is, does the buck stop with him? I don't know all the ins and outs in the athletic department. I haven't worked in one, so I want to be careful about that. But you do wonder, you know, once this audit comes down, which is supposed to later this week, what's going to happen with him? And was Dave Heeke really thrown under the bus? Was he really the scapegoat?
Yeah, he was.
Situation?
I think he was. Yeah, I do. Robbins does not come off looking great. All right, so our buddy Corey Leff, aka John Wall Street, is pitching John Brody, former Learfield CRO, and Tim Pernetti, who was president of IMG Academy and was second in the race for the Big Ten commissioner job. He's pitching those as potentials. Great, I appreciate that. With that said, I mean, listen, I would not have let Dave go right away. And the thing that's weird about this to me, and then we'll move on. You're going to let Dave Heeke go right now, which I understand, but then he's allowed to work for 2 more weeks. Either get him out of the building, and I don't think Robbins. I think Erica Barnes deserves the job, and I don't think Robbins has.
Was it interesting though that it was Mike Andrea who was named the interim AD, and instead of Erica Hansen? And you never know. Maybe she was offered it and she said no. I don't know, but that was just an interesting development.
Erica Barnes would be perfect, and I think it's a shame. She's been in that athletic department for a long time, and I think it's a shame she's not going to get her shot. Now, she's probably just not one of Robbins' people, and simple as that. But it's frustrating, and we'll more on this as it goes along. We never had Dave Heeke on this show. We tried, and we never had him.
Well, the last thing I'll say is, as long as Dr. Robbins is the president, I wonder how difficult it might be for Arizona to land a potential top replacement as an athletic director because of that. His reputation as a guy who kind of runs the department, and then of course there's the whole financial issue. And did Dave get thrown under the bus? You know, the 80 circles I'm sure are as tight as the coaching circles, and these discussions are going to be made. So if you want to bring in someone like one of Corey Leff's guys, or like a Mac Rhodes at Baylor, who was an Arizona alum, I wonder if they're even going to consider Arizona, considering the current state of affairs.
Yeah, and I completely get that, because it's going to be a mess. With that said, we'll talk more about this in the coming weeks. Let's talk about all of the craziness that happened in the last week since we were on. Brent Brennan had, in my opinion, a heck of a first week. Got a lot of players to stay. Shane, number 2, grade Brent Brennan's first week as Arizona's head coach. Not necessarily a buy or sell. Give me a letter grade is how you would rate his first week.
Well, put it this way: if you ask me buy or sell a letter grade of A so far, I would buy it in a heartbeat, because he's done, I think, everything that he possibly can do to this point. I mean, it was, I always tell people it's an event. Every basketball game at McHale Center is an event. It's not just a game. And then we saw that with the football team, and Noah and T Mac announcing they're coming back, and then the football players joining Brent Brennan with a fantastic jacket he was wearing on the court, by the way, for that, in between during the commercial break and getting the fans excited. So in step number 1, I think, and it's the first step of many, but step number 1 is, okay, how many of these current players from the Jed Fish era can I retain and bring back next season and sell them on this program and sticking with it? And he's done a fantastic. Didn't get everyone.
You bet.
Jonah Coleman left for Washington. Totally get it. Close relationship with Scotty.
Sock's probably gone.
Sock, Tacario Davis, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. But to get Fafita and McMillan and Burnett and Mono, all the Servite guys are coming back. Wendell Moe on the offensive line. Speedy's
4 out of
coming
5
back
on the offensive line. Yep.
And then you got Dalton Johnson, Traden Stukes, Gunnar Maldonado. All those guys are coming back. And then you get some of the guys who committed to the 2024 class. Jordan Washington's the most recent
That's
one. Running
huge.
back,
That's
massive.
yep,
Matt
massive.
Moreno, our guy Matt Moreno loves him and talked him up
Yep.
a lot. So he's done everything so far that he can. It sounds like the coaching staff is starting to come together. We've seen that already. The big question, and we'll get into this more later, is the chemistry. The current players, a new coaching staff. How's that all going to go? That's going to, once the honeymoon's sort of over, we'll have to see how that all shakes out in the day-to-day grind. But I don't think you can ask more of Brent Brennan than what he's done. And I thought Fifita and T-Mac were going to be gone, along with most everyone else. And what he's done so far and just selling them on the sticking with Arizona, whether it's loyalty or just the vision for the program or convincing them that they can win. I'm sure NIL money had something to do with it as well. It's been a master class for Brent Brennan in a very short time so far.
All right, so a couple things that have been out there over the last week or so. So the runners up for McMillan and Fifita was Alabama, not Washington. So just
I did hear that. Yeah,
yeah, that was,
and I'm sure they got offered. And interesting, you talk about how could Jeff Fish turn down money. I'm sure Fifita and T-Mac would have gotten offered a lot more to go to Alabama.
Well, no question. That was pretty much. Yeah, I think Fifita's dad came out and said that, and also there are strong things out there that those guys are taking less money and distributing more of that NIL money to their teammates, which just shows that they're good human beings and good teammates, and they want to win. And this team, as it stands right now, is a top 25 team going into next year. Are they the favorites in the Big 12 as they were before? No. Yeah. Utah's probably there. But I think Arizona, you can make an argument with Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, right there in the 2 through 5 range on paper going into next year. And that's what you can ask. Now, we're going to see Brent Brennan's going to bring in some of his guys, and I get that. But right now, I mean, what those guys did on Saturday was electric. So good job for Brent Brennan. I think let's start. We'll kind of carry this into number 3, Shane. Regardless of what happens from here, Arizona's roster retention has already far exceeded expectations.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I thought so many more guys would be gone. And let's remember too, there is another transfer portal period. So you have to wait and see. Some of these guys who said they're coming back, they get acclimated to this new coaching staff and they go through spring practice and everything. Some of these guys still might say, you know what, I wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to give it, but it's just not the right fit for me. And that's okay. That still might happen. So it's not
they'll lose some guys. Yeah.
They probably will lose some more. And that's okay. You don't want guys who are going to stick around just because out of some sense of loyalty, which I mean, I respect that, but they have to do what's right for them and their future. So I get that. And then, but certainly the commitments they have, the recommitments from so many guys is fantastic. I think one thing in particular the Jed Fish and his staff did very, very well at was add depth at multiple positions, especially up front on both sides of the ball, to where I think that was a big advantage for Arizona late in games. You'd see guys in their team suck and win in the fourth quarter, and Arizona was still able to rotate guys in and out. And Arizona's lost a lot of those guys who you didn't see on the stat sheet very much, but would come in and play and spell the starters for a good chunk and have them fresh late in games. So that's going to be a big challenge. But no, I don't think you could reasonably ask any more than what Brent Brennan and the staff that he's beginning to build have already done in terms of bringing guys back.
No question. And we're forgetting about one other aspect of this, Shane. And we don't know how the coaching staff's all going to shake out. Getting Zoe Carter as the running back coach, he's an excellent recruiter. That's what Arizona needed. But Dwayne Akina as Arizona's defensive coordinator, you talk about retention. By the way, he's a phenomenal follow on Twitter. I mean,
he's posted more in the last week than he had like in the past year or two. I think
outstanding.
He's fired up.
The fact that this was a guy that was trending towards retirement. I had heard from behind the scenes. I think we talked about this at some point. That there was some. He wasn't necessarily on the same page as Jed Fish. That's why I don't think Johnny Nansen was either. That's why those guys had left before Jed went to Washington. I don't think it was the fact that they were worried that Jed was going to take another job. I think they thought, okay, we're just not on the same page with Jed. Bringing Akina back, he's going to get a chance to run that unit. Arizona's defense significantly improved with Dwayne Akina's presence. You can credit Johnny Nansen somewhat, but I think you have to give Akina credit, as you have, Shane. So to bring him back, I think is phenomenal. And we'll see what kind of staff he puts together on the defensive side of the ball. I think in the next week, we should see the offensive coordinator. What are they going to do there? and then on the defensive staff there. But right now, I mean, you got to be thrilled with what we've seen. And I want to thank on this show, and I highly doubt that a billionaire is listening to this program, but Humberto Lopez has been crucial in all this. And maybe this is part of the reason that Heeke's not, employed anymore by Arizona or won't be much longer. Maybe Heeke didn't connect to the boosters like Mr. Lopez as he probably should have. Because it's interesting how Lopez, I really had never heard his name. And then he comes out of the blue in the last week. He's spending all this money on players, apparently sending Jed Fish nasty text messages.
Yeah.
We'd never heard of him. I mean, have you ever heard of him?
No. And I think that the booster that I think we'd all knew for a long time was Artie Moreno.
Yeah.
So everyone knew his name. But yeah, it's interesting that that Lopez is he's come out of I don't want to say out of nowhere, obviously, but he's come out much more publicly, and basically the money he's spending right now seems like it's Jed Fish money, and basically just screw you. I'm gonna make sure that you don't get these guys. But you know what? Hey, that works out fine for us as fans. But yeah, it's crazy times, man. But yeah, as much respect to Humberto Lopez, and it does show you that it's more about money than it's ever been. Unfortunately,
but here's the difference, though, Shane.
Yeah,
this is a guy that very well could have. He understands that Washington could have outspent Arizona. I mean, they have more donors with that program. They just went to the national championship game.
Yeah,
but he did his best, and he made it personal. Jed Fish's motto here was "It's personal." He made it personal. With that said, I'm gonna say this again. I think some of the hate for Jed Fish is flat out wrong, and maybe it's a controversial opinion. I don't expect you to always agree, and anybody to always agree with what I said. With that said, here, Shane, this is a guy that rebuilt Arizona's football program. We always said if he left and Arizona, he was poached away, that means he did good things for Arizona's football program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's because of when he left at this cycle and the fact that he was planning behind the scenes to poach a lot of these players. I think there's some negative feelings, but I personally, like Jay Johnson the other year, I am grateful for what they contributed to these programs.
Yeah, I think what happened, Eric, is that the longer that the contract extension went unapproved, the more nervous Jed Fish probably got with the situation. And I'm sure he knew what was going on behind the scenes with Dave Heeke and Robert Robbins as well. And he's like, you know what? I don't know if the Board of Regents is actually going to approve this because of the optics or whatever. And here I have this other school offering me almost twice as much money. So I don't want to take it, but I kind of feel like I have to. I think that's the situation he was in. You could decide whether that was right or wrong. I think that's what ultimately was the driving factor for Jed Fish. With that said, if Arizona's motto this season is F Jed Fish and it works for them, that's fantastic. I don't know if the players feel that way. I don't know how much ill will there is, if any, for most of the players. But if that's the rallying cry and that's what gets them, that's what leads them to some success in their first year in the Big 12, then so be it.
So number 4, I want to talk about this one from Saturday. Scooby Wright posted a status on Twitter, or an update on Twitter. He said, "Making announcements that you're not transferring is very cringe to me." Now, I personally saw that. I liked it. Didn't make any comments. And I heard from Scooby, who messaged me right afterwards, and he said, "Man, I'm getting crushed for this one."
Yeah.
And so let's break this down, because I can see both sides of this, Shane. Do you agree with do you buy what Scooby said, or do you sell
it? 10 years ago, I would buy it. I think it's crazy that times really have changed that much since he played college football, but they have. And Scooby's been great. He's been a guest on our program a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. He co-wrote the foreword for my last book. Love Scooby. He's fantastic. I completely get where he's coming from. I think the difference is the combination of NIL money in the transfer portal. Those announcements are maybe even, I don't want to say needed, but certainly more relevant now than they used to be, because I think the assumption now is that when a coach leaves, guys are all going to transfer out, and that's always been the case to some extent, but more so now than it ever has been. The other aspect of it is just the hype factor, and the video. I'll be honest, the little video that Noah and T-Mac made, I've watched it probably a dozen times. It was great, and they showed it on the big screen at McHale Center, and it hyped everyone up. It's going to help them sell tickets. So it's more, it's much of a marketing thing as anything. So I get it. I completely get where he's coming from. It's like you're making video announcements that you're staying now. But with I think a lot of Arizona fans assumed that these guys were gone, and Arizona wanted to get to our attention and say, no, wait a minute. These guys are staying. Please stick with us. Please stay the course. Please buy tickets. So from that perspective, I think it was important. Totally get Scooby's point. And again, a decade ago in that environment, I probably would have agreed with him, but times really have dramatically changed that much since then.
All right. First of all, let me say this. I think anybody that is posting negative comments to Scooby Wright on this particular issue,
you have to go through me.
Is an idiot. Yeah, is an idiot. I mean, I'm just, I'll be honest. That's how I feel. Do you have to agree with him? No, but to say you're wrong, Scooby, you're a moron. Ridiculous.
Did people say that? I didn't see all the comments. I saw some people that respectfully disagree with him, but
I have no problem with that. I think that's a great way to handle it. If you're respectful about anything on social media, whatever we put, there are people that on our videos on YouTube that'll post ridiculous things.
How dare I respect.
Yeah, well, listen, if somebody doesn't agree with me, of course, I say a lot of dumb things that you're not going to agree with, I'm sure, over all these shows that we do. With that said, there's a way of going about it. I get where Scooby's coming from. I understand it completely.
Yeah, I totally.
I am old school. Yeah. You and I are old school in a way, Shane. With that said, I also had somebody like my mom came to me who knows nothing about Arizona football. And she's like, yeah, you know what? I saw what those kids did. I thought it was really cool how they came out and they hyped the crowd up. I mean, this is somebody that's unbiased, that has absolutely no skin in the game here.
Yeah.
And said, I think it's cool. So I see it from both sides. I just don't want anybody to be critical of Scooby for putting his point of view out there. I don't like that this is the day and age where you have to make a video for a commitment and then a video for a recommitment.
Yeah. You don't have, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, like Kean Burnett just said, I'm back Tucson or something.
But Kean Burnett is a guy that has, had how many yards receiving over the
last
I
understand your point. I'm just saying it's not something you have to do, but I don't, and I think if this was, the mid 2010s, it's crazy to think that was a decade ago, then I think I'd be with him. But I think, again, with the expectation being that most of these guys were going to transfer, that I thought Fifita was gone. I thought McMillan was gone. That was a heck of a moment. It was a great video and it was a great moment. And so I think, at least in the case of those guys and some of the others who made big plays throughout the season, I'm okay with it. But I totally get Scooby's point. I respect it, and we should have him back on to chat about it at some point.
I absolutely would like to. With that said, I also want to point out one other thing. I said, this team had a hell of a year, and I said, how do you think you guys would have stacked up against them, the 2014 team? And he said they would have beaten us.
Oh wow!
So there you have it.
You just told me that for the first time, and I did not expect that answer from. Interesting.
I did. Yeah. So I said to Scooby, I said, you guys were a great team as well. I said, what do you think about it? And his response was, yeah, they would have beaten, I think. So,
okay. I didn't want to say it, but I actually agree with him.
I do too. Well, I mean, I think we can all agree, Shane, that this Arizona team was the best team since 1998.
Yeah. Agree.
Best. Yeah. And I think 2014 is a distant third.
I don't know they're distant, but I think all the stars aligned in 2014. I think this team was legitimately well-rounded, on all facets, and especially when Fifita came in anyway, and deserved their final ranking of number 11.
All right, last bonus question before we'll talk basketball in the second segment. So that there's one good thing about Jedd Fisch being gone. Does that mean, Shane, it's the end of the DJ?
I thought about that a couple of weeks ago, but I thought, you know what, there's bigger things to talk about. You're hoping, right?
Listen, of all the things Jedd Fisch did, that was by far the worst.
Was it his idea though, or was it just like
it
something
has to be? Absolutely. He wanted to have that in there.
Yeah.
Thinking it would fire up the team. I mean, that and that stupid country song in year one, that was
really
bad.
He learned from that.
Get rid of the DJ. We don't need it. You can play music like any other normal, if the fans for this team are not going to be fired up enough to show up and be loud at the proper points, it's ridiculous. Yeah, we don't need that. We don't need that annoying DJ. Yeah,
it's like when in McHale Center, like late in the game when they're against UCLA, when they're making the rally and everyone was going crazy. Like you see the little sign that says like noise or like, it's like, You don't need to put that on McHale. You shouldn't have to put that anywhere. At Arizona Stadium, maybe it makes more sense. But yeah, the DJ, I think it's like we already have Jeff Dean, the PA announcer.
Yep.
He can do it. You don't need a second guy. And sometimes they feel like they kind of step on each other, and it just gets ridiculous. So yeah, I think this is an opportunity to make a change. Yes.
There is nobody that's over the age of 40 years old and I'm about to be 41 that thought the DJ was good. I mean, if you did, and you could put it in and I'm sure he's a nice guy.
He needs to get off our lawn, basically.
His antics at the stadium, and we've talked about this a lot on this program. Enough is enough. Okay, so if there's a positive, look on the bright side. We'll talk a lot more about, listen, this football stuff is not going away anytime soon. Giving Shane and I a lot of content, and we appreciate that.
We do.
Coming up next, let's talk a little basketball here in Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here, and I'm at the Ice Shaker Warehouse, the proud sponsor of the Wildcat Country podcast. And I got something new and exciting to show you. We're talking about the 4D printed University of Arizona shaker bottles with the Legacy Championships on it. Check it out now at iceshaker.com.
Shane, I'll tell you what, on Saturday, that game was cringeworthy throughout. I mean, when it was, 32-13 or thereabouts, I mean, it's a great win. Yeah. But that game was hard to watch.
It was. And I'm not shocked because UCLA was finally starting to put things together. They look more like the team that we expected this season. I wasn't shocked. Well, I was surprised they fell behind by as much as they did. I wasn't surprised it was close late. I'm surprised at kind of the path the game took. And Tommy Lloyd said after the game, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, look, if this game was anywhere else, we wouldn't have won. No. It was a classic case, like we talked about a lot of the McHale Center crowd dragging the team past the finish line. So they're going through a funk right now. I think the common denominator is Kylan Boswell. Arizona's been able to overcome bad performances from Caleb Love. But when Kylan Boswell doesn't play well, they really struggle. Now, Saturday was an exception. They found a way to win anyway. And Boswell did make the great play, the steal, and then the three-pointer on the other end. But that was pretty much it. So as Kylan Boswell goes, so will the Arizona Wildcats going forward. And hopefully he'll be able to figure things out pretty soon.
All right. So would you say, buy or sell, that the way Arizona won Saturday's game was necessary because it showed that they can rally from a large deficit, which might be a necessary evil come March?
I'll sell it just because I think we already know they're capable of going on big runs. They've come from behind late in games, not that big a margin, but I don't know if it was necessary to win like that. I'm glad they did win. That's all that really matters. But I don't think it was. I just put it this way: I can't find many positives in falling behind that much against an average UCLA team at home like that.
It was terrible. I mean, it was the win was great, and maybe this will fire him up going into this weekend. We'll make our picks here shortly. Want to point this out. There's some rumors from the UCLA message boards that Mick Cronin and the UCLA program have no intention of playing in McHale Center anytime soon because of the hostility of the Arizona fans. Any quick commentary on that?
Is that the official reason, or is it just
apparently
they get their butt kicked and Mick Cronin has to blame the refs every time?
Well, of course, but he doesn't like the hostility of the fans apparently.
Then good luck in the Big Ten, Mick, and good luck dealing with some bigger guys there in the Big Ten who are going to move your guys around in the paint, and then you can blame the refs every single night. No, it's fine if they want to act like that, that's fine. But tough.
The women's team, since we, I think a few weeks ago, you're like, hey, they got a chance to make the tournament, big weekend coming up. And whether they lost 4 or 5 in a row, yes. we just stick the fork in them. Are we done?
Several by very close games, except for the last one. No, not yet. Surprisingly, just because they still have a lot of chances for big wins. So, is there a bigger issue with the women's team? Maybe. We'd love to talk to Coach Barnes about it at some point. I saw Maya Naji like some tweets about some sort of issues within the program, but. No, not done yet. Definitely on the outside looking in, but I would not put the final nail in the coffin as far as NCAA tournament hopes. Just yet.
I'm sticking the fork in.
Okay.
You can say good night there. And I'm kind of bummed we haven't had a Dia on. I know we've tried for months, and there's a lot. Of
we haven't reached out for a little while. We'll try to get her on again. It's just been so many other things to talk about. It's been crazy.
Yeah, and I agree. The football team, obviously, and basketball teams had a great run.
Yeah.
There's a problem in that program. I don't think there are some issues there. I don't know when you see the amount of players and coaches that have churned out of this program, their problems. And this team is playing very hard. There's no question about that. They are playing
And
with.
they've had some injury issues as well, but
you bet. I mean, they're down to eight players. I mean, essentially, but they're playing really hard. So I really commend the players that are out there. But this program has problems, and something needs to be fixed. All right, let's make some picks. We have 5 things that we're going to pick. We did not count last week's because we had a lot going on with Brennan. We did not expect that. Start with a Pac-12 unranked road win. Shane, which way are you going here?
I'm going to go with UCLA over USC. Bruins, like I said, started to put it together. UCLA still has injury issues, so that's my my road win for the week.
Boy, USC is a disaster right now. That's an interesting pick. I'm going ASU over Oregon State. You can pretty much assume what I'm going to do with Arizona against the Beavers as well. ASU is actually not bad. When we saw them in person, they were dreadful, but I'm kind of impressed with what I've seen.
Three-way tie for first in the conference right now with Oregon and Arizona. Yep.
All right, top 25 loss against an unranked team. What do you have, Shane?
I'm going to take a couple teams Arizona's beaten here. I'm going to take Michigan State over Wisconsin. Wisconsin was on a roll until they slipped up at Penn State last week. They just barely got by Minnesota on the road. Michigan State's won 3 in a row. They lost a very close game at Illinois a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to go with the Spartans to get the road win.
I'm going Boise State over number 18, Utah State. Boise State at home has been really, really good. I think they lost their first game at home in like the last 25 or something like that the other week. I think they will bounce back. Pretty good team. Might have a chance to make the tournament out of the Mountain West. So I'm going to go with them. My top 10 loss against an unranked team, going Alabama to pull an upset, midweek upset over number 8 Auburn. How about you, Shane?
I like it. Yeah, not a lot to choose from. I like yours the best probably, but if I have to pick another one, I'll go with Kansas State over Houston. K-State's 4-1 in the Big 12. They just beat Baylor. Not a lot of great options, but I'll go with that one.
All right, let's talk about Arizona at Oregon State on Thursday night, 9:00 game, 8:00 local up in the Pacific Northwest. How do you feel about the Wildcats' chances against the Beavers team that has lost 5 in a row?
Lost 5 in a row, last place in the Pac-12. They are 9-2 at home. Only one game during their current losing streak was at home, and that was an overtime loss to Stanford. If Arizona's thinking about Oregon already and disregarding Oregon State, they're going to find themselves in another close game on the road. Jordan Pope, Oregon State's leading scorer, struggled at Utah and Colorado, but he had scored 20+ points in four straight games before that. He's a good 3-point shooter, good free throw shooter. I think he's going to come back home and play well against Arizona. I'm going to take the Wildcats to win, but I think it's going to be close. I'm taking like 5 to 6 points.
All right, I'm going to take the Wildcats by 12. I think Arizona is going to play with some momentum coming off that performance on Saturday, and put it on Oregon State early and often. I love Wayne Tinkle. Think he's the best coach in the conference.
I know you do.
Yes, I've said that for years. Nothing against you, Tommy Lloyd. Just my love for Wayne Tinkle. Listen, when you can get that team the other year that did not belong in the tournament and get them to the Elite Eight, I'm sold for life. I think, sorry, Wayne, I'm picking Arizona by double digits here. Now, on Saturday, they're going to Eugene and the ugliest court in college basketball. Jane, I think I know Oregon lost both games to the mountain schools last week, Colorado and Utah.
It's a tough trip.
It's a tough trip. Arizona's going to have that trip in a few weeks. I do not like their chances this weekend. I think for this particular game, I take Oregon by 8. I need to see more from Arizona, and I'm going with the Ducks here. And it's the first time I've picked against Arizona all year, I think.
Yeah, I think Arizona's going to be up a bit more for this one just because I think it's going to have more of a big game kind of feel. Oregon has one of the best home court advantages in the Pac-12 outside of McKale Center, and Arizona just typically doesn't win there. And Oregon hasn't lost a game at home this season. They're one of 4 teams that hasn't, and Arizona still has to visit the other 3. Oregon's a good 3-point shooting team. They are last in the Pac-12 in field goal percentage defense, so I think Arizona's going to make some shots. I think it's going to be a close game back and forth. I just think Oregon's home court edge is going to be a bit too much to overcome. I'm going to take the Ducks by, I'll say 5 points.
All right. Listen, if Arizona wins this game, that's what I need to see going into into home dates against the Northern California schools next week. You got to beat Oregon State on Thursday. There are absolutely no excuses to lose that game.
Yeah.
You're the number 9 team in the country. When it comes to the Oregon game, play the game close. It's a it's a tough place to play regardless. It's a good Oregon team that's fighting for a chance in the tournament. I don't have a good feeling. Give us your picks. Let us know what you think. Put it on Twitter, put it on our YouTube page, And we'll see if you're more correct. Maybe we'll give away something if you nail it right on. I don't know. If you put a score prediction, you nail it right on, maybe we'll hit up Chris Gronkowski. By the way, if you buy an ice shaker this week, and we always appreciate if you do that, make sure to mention Wildcat Country in the post-production survey or the post-purchase survey. As we always appreciate that. But more content coming. I mean, there's a lot going on. You never know when a bonus episode of Wildcat Country may pop up. Shane and I did a couple last week. You don't know when you're going to see another one. But for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. It's always entertaining in Wildcat Country. And as always, bear down.